My name is Amanda Collins, and for 10 years I believed I was living the American dream. I worked as a marketing manager at a mid-sized company in Chicago, earning about $65,000 a year. My husband, Mark, was a financial consultant, pulling in nearly $120,000 annually. Together, we bought a beautiful 2-story house in Oak Park, with white shutters and a backyard where I imagined our children would one day play. We met in college, kissed for the first time under the bleachers after a football game, and made love in his tiny dorm room with posters of rock bands peeling off the walls. Back then, everything felt raw and real. He promised me forever, and I believed him. But forever ended one rainy Thursday. I came home early from work, soaked from the storm, only to find Mark sitting at the dining table with a stack of papers. His face was cold, unreadable. He didn't even look up when I entered. "Amanda," he said flatly, "I've made some decisions. The house is mine now. I've transferred the deed. I think it's better if you move out." I froze. "What are you talking about? This is our home." He finally looked at me, and his eyes were sharp, almost cruel. "No, Amanda, it's mine. And I don't think this marriage is working anymore." The words sliced through me. He had already filed the paperwork, using his financial expertise to manipulate the contracts. I had signed documents months earlier, trusting him, not realizing he had slipped in clauses that gave him full ownership. And then came the final blow. I saw her, Rachel, my closest friend since high school, standing in the hallway wearing his shirt. My shirtless husband walked past her, brushing her hand. They didn't even try to hide it. Rachel smirked. "You should have seen it coming, Amanda." My world collapsed. I was left with nothing. No house, no savings, no marriage, just betrayal. When Mark threw me out, I had nowhere to go. My salary as a marketing manager barely covered rent for a small studio apartment downtown. I went from living in a $450,000 house with hardwood floors and a walk-in closet to a cramped space with peeling paint and a view of the alley. I replayed everything in my mind. How had he tricked me? Months earlier, Mark had convinced me to sign routine refinancing papers. He said it was to lower our mortgage interest rate. I trusted him. He was the financial expert. But hidden in the fine print was a clause transferring ownership solely to him. My signature sealed my fate. And Rachel, she wasn't just my friend. She was the maid of honor at our wedding, the one who held my hand when I cried after miscarrying our first pregnancy. Now she was sleeping in my bed, kissing my husband in the kitchen where we once cooked Sunday pancakes. I learned they met secretly at a boutique hotel near the river, $220 a night, paid with our joint credit card. They had dinner at the rooftop restaurant, drank champagne, and laughed at my expense. One receipt even showed a Valentine's Day dinner for 2, while I sat home alone thinking Mark was working late. The humiliation burned, but despair slowly turned into rage. I started digging. Mark had always been greedy, obsessed with money and status. He bragged about his private accounts and risky investments. I remembered passwords, overheard conversations, and began piecing together his financial web. Late at night, I sat in my tiny apartment, scrolling through bank statements, tracing transactions. That's when I discovered the cracks: offshore accounts, undeclared income, and tax evasion. He wasn't just a cheater. He was a criminal, and criminals can be punished. I decided I wouldn't just take back what was mine. I would destroy him. I spent weeks drowning in humiliation. Every time I passed the boutique hotel where Mark and Rachel had met, I felt sick. I imagined them kissing in the elevator, making love in the king-sized bed while I sat alone at home. The receipts told the story. $220 for the room, $90 for champagne, $45 for dessert. They were living my life, funded by my trust. But rage sharpened me. I wasn't going to stay broken. I started small. I remembered Mark's obsession with his offshore accounts. He bragged once, drunk at a Christmas party, about hiding $50,000 in a Cayman Islands account. I dug through old emails, pieced together passwords, and found traces of transactions. He wasn't just cheating on me, he was cheating the government. Next, I contacted Laura, an old college friend who now worked as a paralegal. Over coffee in a dingy diner, I spilled everything. The forged refinancing papers, the secret hotel stays, the offshore accounts. Laura leaned in, her eyes gleaming. "You've got him, Amanda. If you can prove tax evasion, the court will freeze his assets. And if Rachel's tied to it, she'll go down too." That night, I drafted my plan. Gather evidence, bank statements, hotel receipts, emails. Secure allies, Laura, and eventually a lawyer willing to take the case. Public exposure, not just in court, but socially. Mark thrived on reputation. I would shatter it. I began recording everything. I even followed them once, watching from across the street as they kissed outside a steakhouse. Rachel wore the necklace I had given her for her birthday. My stomach twisted, but I snapped photos. Proof. The more I uncovered, the more powerful I felt. I wasn't the abandoned wife anymore. I was the hunter. I knew Mark's weakness wasn't just money, it was reputation. He thrived on being the polished consultant, the man with the tailored suits and the perfect smile. If I destroyed that image, I would destroy him. So I set the stage. Mark was hosting a networking event at a downtown Chicago hotel, a sleek ballroom with chandeliers, $150 a plate dinners, and investors who trusted him with millions. Rachel was there too, dressed in a red silk gown, clinging to his arm like she had already won. I walked in uninvited, wearing black. Heads turned. Some whispered the abandoned wife had arrived. When the speeches began, I waited. Mark stood at the podium, bragging about his successes, flashing slides of growth charts and smiling clients. That's when I struck. I had bribed the AV technician with $500 to swap his presentation file. Instead of charts, the projector lit up with photos. Mark and Rachel kissing in the boutique hotel, receipts for champagne and rooms, emails about our secret nights. Gasps filled the room. Investors stared in shock. Rachel's face drained of color, but I wasn't finished. The next slide showed bank statements, offshore transfers, hidden accounts, undeclared income. I had highlighted the numbers in red. "This is your trusted consultant," I said, my voice steady. "A liar, a cheat, and a criminal." Mark stammered, tried to shut it down, but the damage was done. Phones came out, photos snapped, whispers turned into outrage. His empire cracked in seconds. Rachel pulled away from him, humiliated. Investors stormed out. And Mark, the man who had left me homeless, stood exposed, stripped of dignity. That night, I filed the evidence with my lawyer. Within weeks, the court froze his assets. The house he stole from me was legally returned. His accounts were investigated. Rachel left him, realizing she had tied herself to a sinking ship. The morning after the event, my phone buzzed nonstop. Investors demanded explanations. Journalists wanted statements, and Mark's colleagues whispered about scandal. His empire collapsed overnight. Within 2 weeks, the court froze his accounts. The $50,000 hidden offshore was seized, and the IRS opened an investigation. His clients abandoned him, terrified of being tied to fraud. Rachel, once smug in her red gown, packed her bags and disappeared. She had gambled on a man who now had nothing. I returned to the house he had stolen. The judge's ruling was clear. The property was rightfully mine. Walking through the front door, I felt the weight of betrayal lift. The hardwood floors gleamed. The kitchen smelled faintly of cinnamon from old memories, and the bedroom, once desecrated by their affair, became my sanctuary again. Mark tried to call me, begging for forgiveness. His voice cracked, desperate. "Amanda, I made a mistake. I lost everything. Please help me." I listened in silence, then said, "You took my home, my trust, my dignity. Now you can live in the ruins you created." And I hung up. For the first time in months, I slept peacefully. My revenge wasn't just about reclaiming property. It was about reclaiming myself. The silence in my reclaimed home was different now. It wasn't the silence of abandonment, but of victory. I walked through each room slowly, touching the walls, the furniture, the memories. This was mine again, not because Mark gave it to me, but because I fought for it. Mark's downfall was swift and merciless. His salary of $120,000 meant nothing when the IRS came knocking. His accounts were frozen, his clients gone, his reputation shredded. He moved into a shabby apartment on the south side, a far cry from the polished life he once flaunted. Rachel left him within days, unable to stomach the chaos. I thought about the nights they spent together, the hotel rooms, the champagne, the whispered promises. I imagined them laughing at me, believing I was weak, and now I laughed at them. They had built their affair on lies, and I had turned those lies into weapons. But revenge wasn't just about destruction, it was about rebirth. I started rebuilding my life. I poured my energy into my career, negotiated a raise to $75,000, and began saving for the future. Sometimes, late at night, I would sit on the porch with a glass of wine and think about everything that happened. The betrayal, the humiliation, the rage, and then the justice. I wasn't the same woman anymore. I was sharper, stronger, unbreakable. Mark once told me, "You'd be nothing without me." Now he was nothing without me.